That's not a good sign.
Yeah, it'll do it for a second and then it'll be fine.
I don't know what
I actually have very good internet here. Is it freezing up? Can anyone see us? Girl.
Hey.
Hi. Are we frozen? Oh, there we go.
That looks better.
Now we're, oh God, we just behave like assholes.
Everybody got a peek. Everybody got a peek of the last 24 hours.
Oh my Lord. Okay, it looked like it was freezing up on us. So,
it's a good start to the
Lord
night.
mercy, Sunday Fun Day is getting real. So, I know Downton Abbey is on, and I know Your Walking Dead is on, and I'm sorry. But I'm not. As you know, this is our monthly Q&A. No, not already had a few drinks. I'm on my first glass of wine. You're so very welcome. So what has happened is, you know, we are, I'm in Denver now. So I can't like jump on a train and go to Shari's house. Mm-hmm. So Shari was just at MommyCon in Chicago. She jumped on the plane and got in last night. And we have been living our lives today. We went to brunch. We went on a walk.
We had a good day.
It's great. We had a wonderful time. And we went and had barbecue. I had some ribs and some brisket. And so now we're here to talk about your boobs. Because that's how we operate here. You know, oh, this is what kind of wine? So these chats are sponsored by Evenflo Feeding. They allow us to travel and take time to do this and arrange everything. So thank you, Evenflo. Thank you, everyone there. We love you. Our unofficial sponsor for this evening is Kim Crawford. So bless him and his delicious, delicious wines. So all of you know who I am, basically, you know, hooray. So I'm going to let Shari talk about herself, for those of you who don't know her, and she will talk about her life and life, liberty, and the pursuit of lactation. So
first let me say, if I sound out of breath while I'm just sitting here doing nothing, it's because Denver altitude, it is hard to adjust in 5 hours, 24 hours.
I'm still adjusting.
My heart is racing and I'm out of breath. And so
remember how last month I was sick and coughing the whole time? And
it's my turn.
Basically coughing so hard I had to vomit. Now it's her turn.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
So if she runs away screaming and dying, I will...
I'll just lay right here on the floor.
I'll get it done. I will do it myself. So...
All right.
Here we go.
I will do my best. Anyway, hi everyone. So good to see you guys. I am so happy that we were able to make this work out. As Jamie said, we told you we would make this happen, whatever it took. And so I did jump on a plane from MommyCon over to Denver, and we did have an awesome day today. A lot of you guys already know me. I saw some of you over at MommyCon and watched us for the last few months together doing these Q&As. But for those of you who don't, I'll give you a quick background. It's a long time. It's been a long, long time that I've been doing this. 25 years of mamas and babies and boobs and births and everything else. I was labor and delivery nurse for 7 years. I was a nurse midwife for 7 years.
And what we did last night, Shari and I were up until 4 o'clock Eastern. We were up so late last night just talking. Because like I've known you for 5 or 6 years now, or like 20 years, I don't know.
Long time.
And I knew her background, but I did not know her actual path through nursing school into midwifery and all of this, and it was fascinating. Yeah. So we may talk about that during our second Q&A tonight. Yeah. Just because I think it's worth hearing. It's definitely worth hearing.
You definitely didn't know any of that, and so It's been a long time, and I really have taken care of thousands and thousands of moms and babies and dads, and through their births, I've delivered over 600 babies of my own in my own practice, but been involved with thousands. And for the last 10 years, I've been in IBCLC and had a retail store in New Jersey and a learning center, and I teach classes and I do online classes, and I've been working with Evenflo Feeding for the past almost 5 years now. I help them to develop their new advanced double electric breast pump, and I also have my education included with the pump. So, and Jamie and I have been friends for years.
Yeah.
I had a web TV show for 3 years.
Back before you could do this.
Back before there was video on the internet, I was doing video on the internet. And so Jamie and I, and actually when you watch some of those old ones, we just look a little different, like a little younger, but there's like literally no difference.
Nothing has changed.
Nothing has changed.
And we've been like this since the day we met, which is a hot mess. But it's great. It's great. This is why we work together.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So yes. So now we do this, living our lives, taking your questions. We talk about breastfeeding and pumping during this. If we have the energy, we do a Q&A after this where it's like anything goes.
Yeah.
Basic password is baby guy after dark. So we just talk about whatever we want. So we've been taking questions. We've been taking notes about everything. We will get to the questions you're asking on here later. But we have a few that we really thought needed to be addressed. So let's do this.
On with the show.
On with the show. I am exclusively breastfeeding my 12-week-old son, and I need an emergency colonoscopy this Wednesday, and due to anesthesia, I can't breastfeed for 24 hours. I've been trying to get him to take a bottle. I've tried 3 different types. He's not taking them. Any advice, please and thank you. Excuse me.
That's a very good question, and it's one that comes up really often, and here's why. Because you're getting that information from the anesthesiologist or the physician, whoever's taking care of you, to say, you know, you can't breastfeed when you have those medications in your system. And so, you know, what are you going to do? Pump and dump your milk? Try to get a baby who doesn't take a bottle to take a bottle? The answer is you don't need to do any of that because it's totally safe to continue breastfeeding as soon as you wake up. Those drugs are really short acting, and there is no time that you actually have to wait after you've had anesthesia to just continue to breastfeed your baby.
Yeah.
So you feed before you go under. You feed as soon as you wake up. There is no bottle feeding or pumping or dumping or any of it.
In theory, is it kind of like the whole, like, you can't have a drink while you're nursing, whatever. It filters itself out, and by the time you're able to do it.
And especially the medications that they're giving for colonoscopy. And it's very light. It's not even deep sedation like they do in some like very, surgeries and things like that. So my advice is do nothing. Just feed the baby before you go in and feed the baby when you come out.
Okay.
It's just wrong information. You can actually look this up online. There's some really good resources that will tell you what you need to know about medications and anesthesia, but specifically for this, there is no reason to pump and dump your milk.
Oh, yeah, I was just reading. You know how I get. Okay. So let's go. Make sure my volume is down on this.
My head feels like it's in a fight.
Listen. We're all getting through it. We are getting through it today. Okay. Shari, you spoke about how breast milk changes over time. I'm heading back to work and wondering if 4 ounces of milk from 3 months ago will keep her full, or should I plan for more ounces due to milk content? Not sure how much her needs have changed over these months and need to plan her feedings. Thanks for being there for us breastfeeding mamas.
Yeah, that's nice. You're welcome. No, I think that 4 ounces is a normal amount of a feeding, and this is something that we go over like pretty much every time we do our Q&A, and it seems to be one of those things that we have to just keep repeating. And it has to do with quantity of milk. And a normal feeding for a breastfed baby is somewhere around 3 to 4 ounces, and it doesn't change throughout the year. Now, can a baby, I'll have moms who say, but my baby takes 5 ounces. Okay, so we're talking on average here, but the basically 4 ounces is a normal feeding. And so the question, I think, what she's really getting at is, because milk changes over time, the 4 ounces that she pumped 3 months earlier, is that going to be enough for her baby because of the content of the milk? And somebody asked me this at MommyCon too. It was one of the questions, like, well, what if I freeze milk and you're saying that breast milk changes? Is it still okay for my baby? Of course it's still okay for the baby. And we're not talking about exclusively feeding them milk from 6 months ago. We're talking about a bottle, a bottle, totally fine. And there's nothing to worry about. Obviously, milk can be frozen and it can be used, and it's totally okay. And, we're expecting, and now I'm expecting that she actually breastfeeds her baby every day too. And this is just a one-off.
Huh. Very sensible, very sensible. Well, this is similar. This is very similar. I'm starting a job this week. My son is 13 months, but still nurses frequently. He won't take a bottle, and at most will be away for 5 hours. He will be okay, but should I pump to maintain supply?
Well, it really depends at 13 months how often he's actually breastfeeding, and if you want to maintain that same schedule when you have your days off. So it's really going to come down to, like, if you can eliminate that feeding during that 5-hour stretch when you normally work and you're home with your baby, so like on your days off you eliminate that feeding, then your body will just adjust to that so that there's no reason to pump while you're at work. Probably what I would recommend is if you want to maintain more feeding and your baby's still breastfeeding during that schedule when you're home, then you want to pump once, because 5 hours would be a long stretch if you're used to breastfeeding at that time.
You don't want to get engorged.
You don't want to get engorged, and you don't want to create issues, and it's really hard. Your body can adjust to different schedules, but it can't adjust day to day. And I think that's the main point, is like, if you want to train your body to only make milk at certain times, that can absolutely be done, so that you can just eliminate that feeding at, we're talking a 13-month-old baby here too. We're not talking a 2-month-old. But you can't do that and change every day. Your body will be confused, and it's going to get engorged.
Huh. Well,
So
there you go.
it's really about whether you want to pump at work or not. If you don't want to pump at work, then eliminate it when you're off.
Truth. I would love to hear your thoughts on nursing 19 months and trying to conceive, and how it does or does not affect progesterone in an early pregnancy.
Well, when you are breastfeeding and you're trying to conceive, many people can get pregnant while they're breastfeeding, or they can continue to breastfeed during pregnancy. Typically, there's no issue at all, unless you're having issues where you're not conceiving. And I'm not really sure what the question is, whether she's saying, is she having problems? Is she worried about breastfeeding while she's pregnant, or is she not able to get pregnant?
It doesn't say either way. It's just, does it affect or does it not?
It can. The higher progesterone. Now, your body in early pregnancy will have higher progesterone levels for the first about 8 to 12 weeks before the placenta takes over, and those higher progesterone levels could have an impact on your milk supply. So you might see a little bit of a decrease, but most people at that point don't even notice, because they're nursing an older baby, a toddler, and so you're not really noticing. You're not pumping that much at that point. Typically, they're eating foods as well, so whatever impact it would have is minimal. And so usually the question is more about, is it okay to breastfeed while I'm pregnant? And the answer to that is yes, it is okay to breastfeed while you're pregnant. It is only in the most extreme circumstances where you have a history of multiple miscarriages, or if you're bleeding, or if you're having issues, then you want to speak to your
Because I know some people have brought that up before when it's been talked about a little on my wall. It's like, one of the things to stimulate labor is play with your nipples. Nipple stimulate.
It creates, when the baby sucks or there's any stimulation to the nipple, it releases oxytocin, which then contracts the uterus. So, like, it's the same hormone that would contract the uterus and could potentially cause preterm labor, but in a normal, healthy pregnancy with no high risk and no issues, it's typically fine to breastfeed through the entire pregnancy.
Okay. April, clarifying, she miscarried while nursing.
She miscarried.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, so that's a perfect example of, it may be something you want to consider thinking about. If it's causing uterine contractions, if it's causing, if you have a history of it and you're worried, it may be part of the issue. My guess is if you, depends on what happened too. Miscarriages are different. There's different ways that you can miscarry. There's like loss where you couldn't hold the pregnancy, where maybe the progesterone levels were too low. And in that case, breastfeeding could have been an issue with that. There's other times where you have a fetal demise, where, it's not that you couldn't hold the pregnancy, but the baby died in utero. So it really depends on the situation there. And I would say that if you have a concern and you think that it may be impacting this pregnancy, you speak to your doctor, you speak to your midwife, and possibly consider weaning.
Yeah, that's good advice. Good advice. Oh my goodness, oh my goodness, oh my... any strategies for a baby with a side preference?
No. I had a baby with a side preference. My first baby refused to nurse on the left side. At 4 months old, Jade, when you're making milk, and most of you guys will know this for yourselves, that one side is the producer usually, and one side has, so you'll have some people have a lot more milk on one side than the other. Your body's just not equal. It's not symmetrical. And
we talked about this last time, and I brought up the fact on the men's side, and I will say, both of their different sizes, different depths. And like I said, we get to talk about vaginas and boobs all over this Facebook. Sometimes you got to talk about men's junk.
That's right.
So
we talk about
balls.
We actually talk about your junk pretty often.
No, listen. Yes.
It seems to come up.
You know what?
No pun intended.
Or down. So there we go.
This is going downhill.
We are going downhill.
Fast. What was the question?
Side preferences.
Side preferences. Okay. So yeah. So because you have more milk maybe on one side than the other, sometimes a letdown can be a little bit stronger on one side, and your baby can start to prefer one because it's easier, right? And it's coming out faster. That was the situation for me, Jade. So my right side made twice as much milk as my left side, like twice as much, and I didn't understand, like at the time, wow, that was happening. And she was so smart. By 4 months old, she was just like, I don't even want that side anymore. And so I kept sticking to the right side to the point where the left side completely dried up, because they are independent. Like you can actually dry up one breast and still continue to breastfeed on the other side. And I exclusively breastfed her on my right breast for 9 months after that. A little lopsided. I don't recommend it. It was not very comfortable or attractive, but it does work that way. If you do have a baby that prefers one side over the other, I would say that when they're really hungry, offer them the side they don't like. Like start on the side that they're like avoiding because they're hungrier, than trying to finish on that side. And when they're like sort of out of it and sleeping, what I used to do is like where's Angry Baby?
Here we
I'll
go.
There's
this little jackass. Look at him. He's so special.
So like this is what I used to do. So I'd feed her, right? Like I'd be nursing her on one side, and then when she was like nice and like almost asleep, I would not move her. I would turn my body and try to like trick her. It didn't work.
Really?
No, it didn't work. She would give me the eye, like that one eye, look at me like, what the hell do you think you're doing?
There we go. I think this is a good time as any to talk about this. Elizabeth asks, what are the truly closed system pumps? So let's talk about the difference between an open pump system, an open system, and a closed system.
Yeah, absolutely. Why don't we demonstrate it?
Why, I just happen to have the Evenflo pump right here on my table.
Okay, so the Evenflo pump is a closed system, and I'm going to tell you what the difference is, because this does come up every single time. And I'm just shocked at how many people still don't understand that there are open and closed systems. I talked to a whole bunch of people at MommyCon that they were like, oh my God, I didn't even know that was like a thing.
I bring it up at every single Gearapalooza and everything, and people have no.
They have no idea. They have no idea. Okay, so when you have a pump, what the pump is doing is that this is a motor. It's sucking.
I'm gonna go get something to cover this white table because it is like blinding.
You can't even see it.
Hold on.
So the pump is sucking really hard, and it's creating suction on this tube here. And so when the pump is up to your breast, it's creating suction, obviously, on the nipple, and the milk then goes down into the bottle. And this tube should have no opening. Better.
Oh,
so smart.
Thank you, Sloom.
So the tubing here should have no connection to the milk. People think that milk's supposed to run through this tubing.
Yeah.
They just don't understand how a breast pump works.
Because you also, before I knew about pumps, you would see backup in here.
Yeah,
and you're like,
oh,
milk goes in the tube, it goes in the bottle, milk goes everywhere.
It's not supposed to. It's only supposed to go from here down into the bottle, into the collection container. This is supposed to stay clean and clear and free of milk all the time. So a closed system is one that has a little barrier. You want to hold that closer so they can see it? This
is the little barrier. It's like a diaphragm that goes in here.
Right? So that completely closes and seals off the top.
You see that? Yeah.
Okay. And we're talking a seal at the point of the flange, or the point where the breast is going to. And that's a very important point, because I'm going to bring that up in a minute, of what constitutes our true closed system. Okay. Then this clicks on. And then when this clicks on, it's like a vacuum, so that no milk can actually enter the tubing. It can't splash, it can't pour, you're not gonna knock it over and have milk inside this tubing. You're never washing your tubes, you'll never have a reason to wash your tubes. This is completely clean. When you're done pumping, you just wash this, okay? An open system is completely different, and it will be something like this, where the tube is plugged like right behind the flange, okay, or on the top. I've seen them now on the top.
Really?
Okay, like this.
Okay.
Yeah. So either here or here or here, and there's no barrier, and so milk can splash. And as it's trying to enter the bottle, especially when you have your initial letdown and it could really fill that little chamber quickly, you can have milk suck right into the tube. And then what's going to happen is, if you don't shut off your pump quick enough, it's going to go right back into your pump.
Yeah.
You can't ever really clean that out. So now you've grown all kind of nasties inside the pump that you can't clean. So this is why it's one of those, when people ask what's like a must, definite closed system. And some of the most popular pumps on the market have open systems. Okay, so you really need to check that out and look. And why do they have open systems? Because it's just an older, method of pumping or making a pump.
Yeah.
And to change the whole thing, they would have to change the entire motor.
Yeah.
Think about it. It takes a much stronger motor to be able to create suction on a vacuum. So that's a closed system. Now, some pumps will talk about their systems as being closed because the barrier of the tube going into the pump, now we're talking this piece, has a barrier. So that milk, if it got into the tube, couldn't enter the pump. But that doesn't mean that it can't get into the tube. So those systems are not closed systems. To me, yes, your pump may be protected for being able to share it. Those are the pumps that they say, oh, it's okay to share those pumps because they've been certified that, that pump is clean and nothing's gotten into the pump. Those are the pumps that you'll see that have open at the top but close at the bottom for rental, hospital grades that are open, but the pump itself is protected. Well, that doesn't do very much for your milk or for your tubes. Yeah. So it's important to understand the difference. If you have a true closed system here, you don't need a true closed system here.
Yeah.
Think about it. If you can't get milk here into the tube, this doesn't matter.
It's like a double negative. It'd be redundant.
So there's my answer.
We both have the wheezes because there's no oxygen in Denver.
Oxygen.
Did you know this? She's having water because we can't breathe. So
I'm breathing, but I don't feel any air going in.
Let's see. Chicken and waffles. It's not really a question, but you know.
Yeah. It's good breakfast.
Let's see here. Let's go to some of the live questions. We'll go to some of the live questions now. I would like to breastfeed, but I also want to pump so that daddy and other family members can help feed the baby. When's the best time to introduce the bottle?
Such a good question. I just talked about this at MommyCon as well. You will hear so many different opinions about when to introduce your baby to a bottle because you want to avoid what they consider nipple confusion, like introducing your baby to a bottle too soon could have them reject the breast. And that is true to some extent, you know, especially in the first week or so when you're trying to establish the latch and your milk's first coming in. You really want to really get your breastfeeding off to a good start. But this advice to wait 4 to 6 weeks, I believe, is just too long. Babies will start to have like a nipple preference, sort of like where they'll actually prefer either the bottle or the nipple. They'll start to identify with that somewhere around 2 to 3 weeks. And so if you wait 4 to 6 weeks, there's a good chance, and you talk to a lot of moms who are breastfeeding and they try to wait a really long time to introduce a bottle, and they're like, which bottle should I use? I've tried 20 different nipples and it doesn't work, because the baby just doesn't want a bottle at that point. It has nothing to do with the nipple. So what I usually advise is somewhere around 1 to 2 weeks, and that's early. And what I'm recommending is not supplementing an entire bottle, but if your breastfeeding has been established, that means your latch is fine, you're not in pain, your nipples are not bleeding, your milk is in, your baby's doing good, you've already started seeing some weight gain in your baby, that there's no problems, then what you do is you start to pump just a little bit, like a ½ an ounce or a ¼ of an ounce once a day. And I'm talking tiny little amounts that you can do either with like a hand pump or your regular pump, and let dad feed the baby that bottle once a day, preferably in the evening hours when your milk supply is a little lower, and then finish the baby at the breast. And you do that every day, just to, do you know what I mean? So you're not like doing you're not doing it instead of a feeding, because then you would have to pump. And you're not trying to give the baby tons of milk at that feeding. You're just getting that bottle in the baby's mouth on a daily basis with a little bit of milk and then finishing at the breast. Babies will suck differently on the breast than they will on the bottle. And they can. This is the point, is that they can do both. And when done early and when done with the right way, where you've already started to establish your breastfeeding, they will be able to take both. And many moms are going back to work, and you're going to have to use both. So in my class, I have an online class called Simply Breastfeeding, and that's my whole breastfeeding class. It actually, both my classes, Simply Breastfeeding and Breast Pumps and Briefcases, 2 full-length classes, come free with the Evenflo Feeding pump, so you get to watch both classes. But if you don't have the pump and you want to go to my website, which is sharicriso.com, you can watch that class. There's a whole chapter. Actually, I have a chapter on that in both classes on introducing your baby to the bottle, with more information, more detail about what I'm talking about here.
Somebody just told me I should take an inhaler, and I actually, this is, real life, I do have asthma, and I had to start taking an inhaler when I moved here for the first time in 20 years. So I'm actually, you saw me a month ago, not even a month ago. Y'all saw me. So much better. I am a new human being compared to the garbage. It honestly is just like the adapting here. And I feel great. I feel fine. I feel awesome. Every now and then it just catches. So thank you.
I feel like crap.
Listen! But you look great.
No, thank you so much. I feel like that. Can we open a window?
Are you hot? Are you hot? Okay.
I can't breathe and I'm hot.
Listen, I'm like menopausing.
No, that's fine.
There. Okay.
We're very hormonal over here. We're having hot flashes, Jamie and I.
It also, she just gets warm. Yes, Denver is wonderful.
That feels so good.
People are asking a lot about weight loss and breastfeeding, and I think they're asking both sides of this. Mother weight loss, and also how much weight loss is acceptable for a baby. So if you want to touch on that,
2 totally separate topics.
2 very different topics.
So we could start with mom's weight loss, because typically you're going to burn a lot of calories when you're breastfeeding. So like the books will say that you burn 500 calories a day approximately when you're breastfeeding. And so the weight will drop off and you'll just like lose all your pregnancy weight. And for some of you lucky ones out there, that is exactly what happens. And it does help. And for the other half of the moms out there who are like, I didn't lose any weight while I was breastfeeding.
Or the uncles that sit on their asses at their computer all day.
It can really go either way. For some people, they can't lose the weight until they stop breastfeeding. A lot of that has to do too with, well, it has to do with hormones, but it can also have to do with the fact that you're a lot hungrier when you're breastfeeding. So your intake may be a little bit more. I'm not recommending anybody diets when they're breastfeeding. Yeah. And whether you're losing it or not losing it, the most important thing is that you're keeping yourself healthy, that you're staying hydrated, that you're taking care of yourself because you're nourishing your baby. So whether you lose weight or not, yeah, you'll do it later. If you don't do it now, you'll do it later. And I really don't have an answer whether it's one way or the other. The books will say you will lose weight.
Yeah.
But you talk to moms.
Books say a lot of things.
Books say a lot of things. The other question about weight loss and breastfeeding babies, right? For babies.
Yeah.
What's acceptable?
And there were 2 questions that I saw. One was vaginal birth, the other was C-section.
Yep.
So
babies, most people know that when babies are born, they're going to lose weight. Okay, so they come out, they plop them on the scale, and then they continue to lose weight over the first week or so. And usually what they'll say, again, the book says 10% is like a normal amount. Now, this is so like, you know, it's so not exact, this science. Yeah. So you're really, I mean, 10% is like an average amount. It doesn't mean that you're going to definitely have the baby lose that much, or maybe there'll be a little bit more. The main point here is that why does a baby lose weight? Okay, the way that it's explained to moms, it's like it's okay if they lose up to 10%, but if it goes over that, then we're going to have a problem. Now, what they're not saying is that they have to lose weight. They're supposed to lose weight. It's not that it's just okay if they do. The whole system's designed for them to lose weight. When they're in utero, they're swallowing amniotic fluid constantly, right? So they're constantly swallowing. Then they're born. You are making colostrum, which is tiny little drops. It's not actually volume of milk, okay? But your baby comes out and continues to pee and poop and pee and poop for the first few days.
And don't you love that tar?
And that meconium that keeps coming out. Now, why is it that you're not making a lot of milk in those first few days? Because it's not just you. Nobody makes milk for a few days. It takes a few days for your milk to come in. It's because your baby's not really supposed to take in a lot. It needs a few days
to get it out,
to flush out all the extra fluids that they accumulate during your pregnancy.
Okay.
Because think about it, it's not like
nature
just got it all perfect until that moment of birth, and then what happened? The baby needed to eat, and you're just so inadequate. You didn't make enough milk. We need to do something else. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
There's a reason there's no milk. They need to pee out those fluids, okay? So the weight loss that you're seeing in that first week or two is not fat. It's fluid. It's fluid that's coming out. And then a baby should typically, on average, within the first 2 weeks or so, regain back to birth weight. Now, if you go back in 2 weeks and the baby's 1 ounce under birth weight and they're like, okay, you need to supplement, you need to really ask yourself, well, it's going in the right direction. Did my baby just poop like a 4-ounce diaper before I walked in? Yeah. And that's why the baby's not back at birth weight. Everything is so individual, and this just drives me crazy when we put babies and moms on these like rigid explanations of what needs to happen and then hold them to it, and then like are so quick to just dismiss their breastfeeding relationship and actually interfere. They're actually causing the problems that they don't really have.
It's in my friend Elisa Baer, who's the car seat lady. A lot of people don't know. She worked as a pediatrician at Columbia Hospital, and you know, it's like working with Shari. They have a wealth of medical information. And Elisa and I were actually talking. You know, there's this whole like failure to thrive and all this, and like babies' weight loss and gain and whatever. But the best way to see that your baby is maintaining and gaining is obviously diapers, and then watch how their clothes fit. If their clothes that fit start to get really baggy and big, that's when you know something is up.
They're going in an opposite direction. And sometimes babies will grow in length and not necessarily grow in weight. They can stay. They have growth spurts. So you'll have and I think we covered this the last time too, where they're not gaining as fast as a pediatrician might be wanting to see, or they're at the 5th percentile on these growth charts, which is actually normal. Okay, so it's really all babies grow at different rates, and there's no like real set way that they need to grow. I would say that it's very individual, and you're right, pee and poop is going to be your best indicator. I don't weigh babies ever for the first 2 weeks. I don't even look at their weight. I'm looking at, I'm watching breastfeeding. I'm seeing if there's milk transfer, meaning does the breastfeeding seem softer after the feeding? So it was harder, the baby ate, now the breast is soft, the pillow underneath is not soaking wet, it went into the baby. Okay, I can hear swallowing. The baby's peeing wet diapers and the baby's satisfied. I don't want to know for the first 2 weeks, because honestly, it doesn't matter. It wouldn't do anything different anyway. The question that you asked was about C-section and vaginal
versus
birth.
C-section.
And so this is an important one, because what we were just talking about the idea that the weight loss that you're seeing is the extra fluids from pregnancy that they're peeing out. One thing that really happens during a vaginal birth is the vaginal squeeze. We were talking about this earlier.
We talked about all kinds of things. We were talking about vaginal seeding.
Squeezing.
We were talking about vaginal squeezing.
We had a whole vagina conversation.
Yes, we did.
And
I don't talk about vaginas that often.
You save it for a final.
Save it for Shari. I save all my vagina talks for Shari Criso.
I'm just so honored. Okay, so Jamie. So the thing about C-sections is there's no vaginal squeeze. So the baby is not being squeezed through the birth canal. When the baby is born vaginally, the baby is squeezed, and a lot of fluids are coming out of every orifice of that baby's body, through their mouth or their nose, and so it's excreting fluids. And then the baby is born, and then they plop that baby on a scale, and that's the birth weight, and then you have a weight loss over the first week or so. When the baby's born by C-section, there's no squeeze. So the baby comes out, it's really juicy, and they plop it on the scale, and now the baby lost 14% or 12%. You understand? That would have come out in the birth. And then the birth weight would have been totally different. So I always account for a C-section baby. So, and on top of the fact that there's no vaginal squeeze of the birth, the more fluids that you receive in labor. So if you've had a lot of IV fluids, your baby will have a lot more fluids on board. Okay, and typically, always with a C-section, you have an IV. Some babies, some people will have scheduled C-section. They may have a lot less IV fluid beforehand, because it's like scheduled. Or you may have been in labor for a couple days and had tons of IV fluid and Pitocin, and then had your C-section. That will definitely impact the amount of fluid in the baby. And the amount of fluid in you too. And for all of you guys who notice like that you get all this swelling in your feet and you have a lot of extra fluids yourself after the delivery, that's part of it.
There you go.
I'm breathing.
Yeah, there's the one. Cough. We've had quite a... Kristen just said thrush, thrush, thrush in all caps. And that was actually my next question. People want to know about thrush and how to get rid of it and what can you do.
Yeah. So couple things. One is to identify that it's the right issue, because lots of times thrush is very undiagnosed. It's not diagnosed properly. It's considered mastitis, and then they're given the opposite of what they actually need. They are giving antibiotics, which actually makes the problem even worse. Okay, so if you've had antibiotics during the pregnancy, you want to just keep an eye out, because having any kind of antibiotics, whether it's pregnancy or during the labor, can predispose you and your baby to having thrush. Although even if you don't, you can have thrush. Thrush can cause very sore, painful nipples. Typically, when I'll look at like someone's nipples, and it's not like they're not cracked and bleeding.
Yeah.
They're just like bright red and in pain. Okay.
Like raw?
It's like, it's not, the skin is not raw. It's just, they like bright pink nipples. Like
when I get tickled, they turn bright red.
is typically a very, is indicative of thrush. Pain throughout the breast. In between feedings, it's a very interesting pain. I had thrush with both my kids, so I know, and it was pain. It was like in between the feedings, the sharp shooting pains throughout the breast. Sometimes you'll see it in your baby's mouth, where you'll see white, like on the tongue.
Okay.
But sometimes that can just be milk, so don't get panicked if you see that. But those are all signs of thrush, and it needs to be treated. You can sometimes take care of it yourself by a couple things. One is you want to decrease the sugars from your diet, because sugar feeds the thrush. So if you continue to eat a lot of sugar or drinking a lot of juice or all those kind of things, it's going to keep intensifying.
So is it like a yeast?
Yes, it's exactly what it is. It's yeast.
Okay.
It's yeast.
So it's like nipple yeast and boob yeast infection.
Correct, exactly, and in the mouth.
Okay.
Okay, and so you're using antifungals, like either a topical antifungal creams, or you're using medication like diflucan if it's really bad, which is also antifungal. These are not antibiotics, okay, because that will have the opposite effect. And you are also maybe starting to take a probiotic. Okay. Okay, you're trying to grow
yogurt?
Like yogurt, but really I would take more of like a good like pill probiotic. Okay. Okay, because you really need, at that point, you need to really start building up the good bacteria in your body. You know, we all have yeast in our body, whether it's in our vagina or in, you know, in the breast. There's always yeast everywhere. When yeast overgrows, it's because normally your good bacteria will eat the yeast and take care of it so it stays suppressed. Okay. Okay. When you've, you know, messed with the balance of your good bacteria, like taking antibiotics, that's when yeast can overgrow. So it always is in the body, but it overgrows when the good bacteria is not there. So taking a really good probiotic every single day, and I really think everybody should take a probiotic every single day anyway. It's good for your gut, it's good for your health, and you want to take like a good one every day. And yogurt's not enough. I mean, yogurt's good, but it's just not enough. And if you're continuing to suffer with the yeast, please see your lactation consultant for a diagnosis. See your OB and mention the yeast. If you feel like you're not getting a good answer or they're not understanding how to treat it, then maybe seek other support. Yeah. It's kind of sometimes not understood completely.
That's sensible advice. A few of you have been saying, with prayer hands and everything, weaning questions, night weaning and whatnot. There are lots of variables and
about weaning.
Yeah,
what
weaning
tips.
What is it that people are just wanting weaning tips
because they want to stop breastfeeding.
Yeah.
Slowly. I think that whenever you decide that you've had enough, now remember, your baby has to have either breast milk or formula for the first year. So if you're not going to exclusively breastfeed for the first year, then you will have to supplement with formula, which is fine if that's your choice to do that. And then that could even be either completely weaning to formula or doing a combination feeding where you're doing some formula, some breast milk. But after the baby's a year old, you don't need to then supplement to formula. The baby doesn't have to do that. You can start to decrease your feedings. And the baby, what you want, the main thing is that you want to start doing it slowly. Like people want to do it overnight. Yeah. It's not going to happen for your breasts or the baby. It may be what you want, but your breasts and your baby are not going to accommodate that. And so I typically recommend starting with like one feeding. One would be like, a good feeding would be like late in the afternoon. It's usually when you have the least amount of milk. You start cutting out one feeding at a time, and do that for a week or two. And then as that feeding is cut out, then you go on to the next feeding. Maybe it's the mid-morning feeding and you start cutting out that feeding. And you're at that point obviously feeding solid foods and giving your baby alternative nutrition because they cannot, they need to have something. But you don't do it overnight. Your breast will become extremely engorged, and your baby's going to need to do this slowly. So, I mean, without a specific question, it's hard to answer because it depends on the reason and when.
It's
nighttime.
As it's coming up, a lot of it is night leaning.
Yeah, because people want to sleep.
You do.
Yeah. So one of the things that I would say is that it's really hard to wean a baby if they're
in the room with you.
Yeah, if they're bed sharing with you. I mean, that whole question of like, how do I wean my bed sharing 14-month-old?
You get that baby out of that room.
You know, you either have to move them or you have to continue to breastfeed, and they go hand in hand. You know,
Yeah.
So like if you're bed sharing, it's hard to stop them from breastfeeding. They're going to put up a fight with that. And how do you talk to a 14 or a 15-month-old and say no? It really doesn't work. I typically, recommend that if you're going to do that, it all kind of goes together. It's sort of a parenting style that kind of goes hand in hand, and that's where your baby's going to have to kind of lead the way. If you're bed sharing, usually you don't even have to wake up much to breastfeed. So hopefully that's not going to be an issue. Just roll over on your side. Let the baby nurse.
I'm just taking notes for a couple questions from you guys. So let's talk really quick about nursing positions. Mm-hmm. So a lady said, I got a little bit of it. I think a tailbone was broken or something, and it was difficult for her. So since we have an angry baby here, let's talk about the cradle, cross cradle football, all that nonsense.
Absolutely.
Not that it's
couple
nonsense.
Things. When it comes to positioning your baby for breastfeeding, there's two things. One, there's positioning yourself, and then there's positioning the baby. And two go hand in hand, because if you're in a really awkward position, if you're not comfortable, it's really, really hard to get the baby into a good position. So a couple things. One is I recommend either having a good support for the back. I actually have something here. I love this thing.
I'm obsessed. These are called back buddies.
This is a back buddy. Okay, I love this thing. And what this has is a nice, good lumbar support. When you put this behind you, it's going to hold you. Look at how straight up I'm sitting right now.
It is. I have several of these. They sent me a couple.
It's great.
I use them in my bed for watching TV. I put them on the couch.
Me too.
Honest to God, it is everything. It's everything for the back.
Literally, just when I just put this on right now, I literally feel so much better.
And you're relaxing too.
And I'm sitting. Yeah. Look how I'm sitting straight up right now. Okay, and that's going to be important when it comes, especially in the beginning. When you first start breastfeeding, it's really important to get yourself into a good position. Second thing that I recommend.
It's called the back buddy.
The back buddy. It's a company called Mom Essentials. The Back Buddy by Mom Essentials. So. The other thing that you want to do is you want to bend your knees. So you get a little nursing stool. You know, the little nursing stools are kind of angled. You get a little nursing stool and you put your feet up on it so that your knees are bent higher than your hips. Okay, that's going to take the pressure off your lower back, and it's going to prevent you from leaning forward. So between the back support and the knees up, you're sitting straight up. Literally, the baby's now coming to you. And this is, I can't even tell you how many people come into my office for consultations, and they're awkward, and they're struggling, and their necks are hurting, and their backs are hurting, and everything's hurting because of the way that they're sitting. And I sit them down, and I put them with the back buddy, or I put them into a glider that locks so that they're sitting straight up. They bend their knees higher than their hips, and they nurse, and they're like, oh my God, their whole body relaxes because they're so comfortable, and they're not straining. They're not straining. And it's just one of those things. If you can tell, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you're straining, you know what I mean. And then that means you need to do something about it. There are things you can use. But when it comes to positioning, my favorite position for early breastfeeding, the initial first, when your baby's first born, is really to use the cross cradle position. And the reason I like that, what that means is the baby's across, but you're reaching around with your hand and supporting the breast and supporting the baby's head. One of the reasons I like that for a newborn, angry baby's staring at me, with that angry face. the baby's head, the baby knows how to suck. So when the nipple goes in the baby's mouth, the baby does really well. But the baby tends to pull off, and then you can't really keep them on. They don't know to keep their head. So as they get older, you can transition into more of a cradle position, which is like this. It keeps your hands free, and then this is a good position for nursing.
Real quick. People are asking if this is available later to watch. It absolutely is. The good thing about Facebook Live is this video stays on Facebook. So in the videos section on my Facebook page, you can go back, and we have, 7 or 8 of these
many.
live sessions now that you can go back and watch for information and whatever. And when I have time, eventually I'll put them on YouTube. But
I have them on YouTube right now.
Time is a lot.
And on top of that, if you are getting... if you're enjoying what you're hearing and you want more information about a lot of stuff, I have 600 videos on my YouTube channel on all kinds of topics, from cloth diapering to like everything. So beyond just breastfeeding, whether it's your birth or your baby, everything. So you can go on my YouTube channel and or my website and watch them.
yeah.
But yes, everything is available after, and you can just...
That's why
message
Facebook
us.
Live is better than Periscope, even though we don't have hearts. I like the hearts.
We know you're
though.
sending hearts, even
I
though
like
we
the
don't see
hearts.
them. One position I don't like
Football?
is football. I don't like this position. It has to do with the angle of the baby's head. It's very hard. The baby needs to be angled with their head
The throat.
and I talk about this a lot in my class about, the baby's head angled where they're looking in an upward position. If everybody at home just goes like this and tries to swallow, it's really impossible to do.
This keeps it open.
It keeps it open. They can breathe. You can really pull them in close. Their nose is not occluded from the breast. They're just able to really latch well, because you really want to bring them close. The only way to do that is to angle their head in an upward position. Football just does the opposite of that, you know. So I'm not a big fan, although that is like one of the positions they teach a lot in the hospital.
And my sister, good Lord, when she was nursing twins.
Well, that's the other thing.
And it's different. Like,
Yeah.
she would double football those girls in her glider every night in that nursery while I sat there.
And when you are nursing twins, like a good twin nursing feeding pillow or pillows on either side keeps the baby more on their side versus under the breast. So if you are going to do football, you're more of a side positioning latch. Can we talk about burping?
Burping, that was in my notes to be next.
Wow.
That's why we actually have Angry Baby. We had people asking about burping, and we have never, ever, ever talked about burping on here, and burping is important.
And yeah, burping is extremely important. It's a huge thing that I teach in my classes, and I actually have a whole entire episode called Calming Your Fussy Baby, and I go over like everything about burping and fussing and all that stuff, and it's really one of those very misunderstood, like you'll hear people say, oh, I heard breastfed babies don't need to burp because there's no air in the breath. It's like, no. If anyone who swallows is swallowing air.
Yep.
And so
you can't swallow without air.
You cannot swallow without swallowing air. And so breastfed babies do need to burp. And so typically what happens is I'll get moms who come in and their babies are like, they're like, oh, my baby has reflux. They're spitting up a lot. Baby's on medications and all. And I'm like, okay, the only problem here is that you have a lot of milk and you're not stopping to burp your baby. So I want to teach you a couple things. 2 things. I want to teach you about the signs of like, how do you know how often? Because it's not like every 5 minutes you burp your baby. You're actually watching the baby to see when to burp the baby. And then the second thing is, how do I burp my baby? Okay. So the first thing is, let's pretend you're nursing right now. Okay. And you're nursing, and you latch the baby on, and the baby does one of 2 things. First of all, the baby starts to pull their head back. And sometimes that's like immediately right as you're starting to latch. Like you nurse for like 30 seconds, and the baby's like trying to pull off. What just happened is your milk let down. And imagine like when you're drinking like beer or like soda or like you drink really fast and you like it hurts because you gulped really hard. That
the
like,
ice moves around in the cup.
Like the baby's like either straightening out kicking out their legs or ripping their head back. What's happening is the baby just swallowed a giant air bubble, and that's actually a sign for you to take your baby off at that moment and burp your baby before you continue to nurse more. Because if you keep putting more in, it's just pushing that air that needed to come out down into the intestine, and now the baby's going to be fussy for hours. You have to wait for it to pass all through their system. So that's really important. So you watch your baby for the wiggle. I call it the wiggle because babies that are comfortable in nursing, they are very still, and then you watch them, and all of a sudden they're like,
something's wrong.
They do this like, and you'll know what I'm talking about. Is like they all of a sudden
they do
like,
Everlyn.
They like are.
We'll talk about that later.
Don't even start. You got me giggling now.
Sorry. We're not gonna talk about that story.
Why did you
keep going? I'm awful.
You knew that was gonna happen to me. Okay, so you are nursing your baby. So you see the baby arching or pulling back. You need to take the baby off and burp the baby, okay? Now, Jamie, how would you normally burp a baby?
A lot of people like this.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite burping position with any of the kids was the sitting up. I love the sitting up in this, supporting your little wobbly head, doing this. This also worked quite well.
Yep.
Because this never felt.
There's one thing I want to say about. So yes, so what you're saying is like holding them in a position where you're opening the airway and like supporting their head. Very important. So that part, I totally like love that. In fact, when you do it, you're putting your finger, your forefinger and your thumb underneath their chin and supporting from ear to ear. It's not on their throat.
No.
It's holding up the jaw. And then what I like to do is put a pinky under the arm like this so that you're really supporting the head and the neck together. But the thing about padding, okay, I don't teach padding.
I just do a little rubbing, like.
And the thing is, you don't have to do anything.
No.
So if you think like when you have to burp, like are you like
like I constantly do on Facebook Live.
Can somebody pat me? You don't need anybody to pat you. What you need, the keys to burping a baby, there's two things they need. They need to be awake and not crying. That's how you burp a baby. So they have to be awake, not passed out from the feeding. Because once they pass out at the feeding, you're not going to be able to get the burp out. They have to be awake. And they cannot be screaming their heads up because when they're crying, they're tense. They can't let the air out. So the key to burping a baby is getting them very calm. Now imagine if you put your baby on and 30 seconds into the feeding, you take your baby off because the baby's like needing to burp. Your baby's going to be pissed.
Yeah. Okay.
So you take the baby off. Padding, it could actually make them tense where they don't burp. So what you want to do is this is the way I burp a baby. I'll hold the baby like you said, and then I'll start moving them up and down, and even shushing in their ear if they were crying. If they're not crying, just the movement, and you're not shaking the baby or shaking the air out, but the movement gets them like calm. They go into this like paralysis where they stay very calm. And that calmness and this movement up and down usually gets a burp very quickly.
I think everybody's body responds to movement like that. It's just like in childbirth, when I went through all the classes and stuff, they tell you like one of the things to help a woman while she labors is rhythm and movement. And you have to do movement and get into this rhythm and keep it very similar.
Movement is very calming, and especially for a baby because it's what they're used to from being in the womb. Yeah. So when they think about when you're pregnant, when was your baby the most active, kicking around and fussy? As soon as you lay down. As soon as you try to go lay down and go to sleep, your baby starts to move. When you're moving around all day and the baby's kind of jiggling around all day, baby's very calm and not fussing. So it's the same thing when they come out. But as they get bigger and heavier, this can be really hard because you need like biceps to be able to do that, right? So what then you do is you put the baby over your shoulder, but far over, so that there's a little pressure on the diaphragm, and then you just rock like this. You actually stay away from that. This actually can make them tense. And so what you said before, which is like a little rubbing. But more than anything, the movement will keep them from crying, keep them awake, and the burp comes right out.
Look at that!
And you might need to do that several times during the feeding.
Look at that shit. Look at that.
Can you believe there's something we've never talked about
We've
at all?
never talked about burping
Thank you, baby.
all on here. Thank you, AB.
Don't do that.
That was great. What age can you stop burping?
Well,
when somebody asks that, like when do you?
I just got this straight pain right through my head.
Denver.
Oh, like Denver. Okay. When can you stop burping the baby? I would say that, there's a point where they burp themselves, really. I would say that at least up until 4 months, at least 3 months, you want to do that. They need that soothing. They're unable to self-soothe till about 3 months of age. After that, they start to be able to soothe a little bit better. You'll see that they'll be able to keep their hands in their mouth. They can suck on their hands. Before that, they're like, they try and then they rip their hands out and they get really pissed because they're like, flailing around. By the time they're 4 months, 5 months, 6 months old, they're burping. You're still going to take them off to burp, but what I'm talking about here is really in the first few months. Yeah.
Very good. Real quick, because we have all this stuff here to play with.
We got props and we didn't do it.
We get talking. You know how we are. Facebook
I'm so comfortable with this thing.
Facebook is going to shut us off in half an hour.
Okay,
so we have half an hour now before we have to quit, because now we can do an hour and a half without having to log back in, and it's wonderful. Let's talk really quick about. We normally have the marbles and everything. We don't have those here. I'll get a set for my house. But let's talk about feeding sizes, how much they're eating, and then let's talk about this guy.
Awesome thing. That awesome thing. Okay, let's show these right here. Okay. So this right here, I'm going to show you quantities of breast milk, and what we're looking at is how much milk you make and how much milk your baby on average takes in those first weeks after you deliver. So this bottle right here is what we typically will call colostrum, and it's day 1, day 2.
That's
it's
nothing.
Very small amounts. That's how much your baby's eating per feeding.
Did you say about a quarter ounce?
It's
maybe?
like 5 cc's.
There's nothing.
It's like 5 cc's. That's even a little bit more. And then you can.
This does not. You can't really see it. It doesn't even
cover the bottom.
It doesn't even cover the bottom of the bottle.
Okay, that's how much your baby's eating per feeding on the first day of life.
Yeah.
And if that's what comes out of your breasts, okay, and that's normal, and that's what everybody makes, then do you think that your baby needs to eat on the first day? Like, think about it logically. If this is what you make, there must be a reason that you make this amount, because your baby's not supposed to take in extra fluids. It needs time to pee it out, which we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
By day 3, it's about a half an ounce. And that's like when you're leaving the hospital, or, your milk's just starting to transition and come in. You're talking about like half an ounce to an ounce on the first, like that's the first week, like day 3. By day 10, we're talking about an ounce and a half. That's the entire feeding. That's both sides. Okay, and I think that it's really important to see these bottles, because this is what changes perception. We have issues. We have milk supply issues. There are some people who have real milk supply issues, and then we have more people, I believe, that have perceived milk supply issues, because you think you should be making these full bottles. That you think that if the baby's not eating, 5 ounces, 6 ounces, 8 ounces, then obviously they're not getting enough, which is not true. And so sometimes it's just about knowing how much your body's supposed to be making. This is the first couple weeks. And then this is actually a full feeding. This is the Evenflo Feeding bottles that we're using here are 5-ounce bottles. And 4 ounces is a normal feeding. And it doesn't change through the whole year. So like, those, and I had in my presentation at MommyCon yesterday, I showed, a picture of like 8-ounce bottles that were filled halfway. They always look half empty. Yeah. Okay. So I don't really like big bottles for exclusively breastfeeding or pumping moms, because they always look inadequate.
Yeah.
Like, you never.
I think there's also not a ton of the information is not out there where it's like formula feeding
It's different.
Versus breastfeeding, how much they should be getting.
It's totally
and
different.
when you go to register at stores,
Yeah.
People, for the most part, myself included, for a long time, don't really know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And you were like, oh, register for a few small bottles, get a few of these bigger bottles, like you have to use these big bottles, blah, 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 blah. And you don't.
You really don't. If you're planning to exclusively breastfeed through the year, you'll probably never need more than a 5-ounce bottle. I mean, that's like it. You won't need the big 8-ounce bottles, and they'll always seem half empty. And lots of times that causes problems, like for daycare, because they're looking at a half-empty bottle, and they're really just taking it and comparing it to what a baby eats when they're drinking formula. And let's talk about that for a minute. Like, why is it different? Breast milk changes, so the quantity doesn't increase over the year per feeding, but the milk itself, the quality, the contents of the milk, the calorie contents, all of that is changing throughout the year. So they get their nutrition by the milk changing versus the amount that they're eating. Whereas with formula, it's the same. So what you feed your baby on day one is the same thing that you're feeding your baby throughout the year, so they just need a lot more of it. And so yes, you'll go up to 6 ounces, 7 ounces, 8 ounces, bigger bottles, more volume. And so it's like you can't, they're apples and oranges, you can't really put them together.
Yeah. Real quick, just on the subject of your breast milk changing over time, I'm sure all of you are aware of that photo that went viral of the mom, I think it was in Arkansas, hooray, where I'm from, the woman that pumped. Did you see it? While before and after she was sick.
Yes. I actually had it on my Facebook page.
It's insane.
Yeah.
And like she did this thing, and it's like the milk that she pumped while she was sick looked real heavy and fatty, like colostrum and like whatever. And we usually bring this up in every live we do. Is like breastfeeding while you are sick.
It's very important to continue, and the reason that it changed colors is because the antibodies. Breast milk is evolving, not just over time, but throughout the day. Like there's different things in the milk during the night than there is during the day, and if you're sick, it's immediately creating antibodies. In fact, when your baby's starting to get sick, or there's any kind of bacteria in the baby's mouth, the saliva at the nipple, when the baby latches onto the breast, their saliva, whatever bacteria, you're going to love this, I was just reading about, what the saliva that's in your baby's mouth actually enters to the nipple, and antibodies start to get created to treat exactly the bacteria that it's picking up, like little sensors.
That's insane.
Yeah. So your body is reacting to your baby. Okay. So if you're sick, you're creating antibodies to what you're sick with, so that you're not passing it to the baby. If your baby's getting sick, your baby's passing that saliva back to you, so that the milk changes to start creating antibodies for the baby.
That's.
And so you're gonna see if you pump it out. Typically, before we had pumps, before we did any of that, we wouldn't see the milk. We would just feed, so we didn't know that it changed colors. Now that you see somebody pumping, like that picture you're talking about, which I posted on my wall as well, it was two side by sides, and it was like really white and really yellow, and both fine. It's just that, it changed for the baby.
That's nuts. I know, when I, my God, how many years ago was that? 3 years ago, I got pink eye. And I, no lie, put my sister's breast milk in my eye.
Yeah, and it cleared it right out, right? Yeah.
Hot rag, breast milk.
Yeah, it's the best for pink eye, for sure. Let's make sure we look at this.
Yeah. Okay, go. Yeah.
These are I want to show you this because we've looked at it before, but this is brand new. It's awesome. It's like, I just love this thing. So these are great for, especially if you're at work pumping. They're the storage bag adapters, and what it does, I'm completely tangled up in my phone.
You are tangled in your phone.
Look at this. Okay.
Just take this off.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so this is, what you do with this is, if you want to pump directly into the bags, so that, because when you pump into the bottles, there's sometimes extra milk left over. You can have extra waste when you're pumping into bottles and then transferring into bags. Plus, you always run the risk of spilling with the more handling that you do. And then on top of it, more cleaning, right? So one thing that Evenflo Feeding designed was this clip to make it really easy to pump directly into the bags themselves. And so you take your flange, it doesn't have the tube attached to it, and you remove the bottle, and you screw this little adapter clip here on, okay? And it has these little pinchy things, and what you do is you just stick this right into the bag.
And it hooks it right up.
And it's really, really secure, so you can really pull. That thing's not going to fall off. So now you can pump directly into the bags, and then when you're ready to like remove it, it's a super easy remove. You just do that, and then you can seal it up.
And there's also a gusset built into the bottom of this.
Yeah, I want to talk about these bags because a lot of people don't realize like what's so nice about these bags. They feel different. They look different than what you see out there, like the clear. People will feel them and they're like, oh, they feel lightweight and they feel like different than what I'm used to. There's a couple things about these bags that are awesome. These are the bags that Evenflo makes, and the gusset you were talking about. So like, first of all, that's great because it stands up.
It stands.
Some people don't like the gusset because they want to lay it flat. So if you actually take it and just completely close it, you can get rid of the gusset for laying flat and freezing, but it is good for handling. The other thing about it is that the bag material is made with this like really super great material that they use like in the military to transport foods and stuff. It has 30% less plastic and material to it, so it's great for the environment. Plus, it's just, it freezes really fast, it thaws really fast, it's just awesome. It's an awesome product.
It has little affirmations on it, too, like you've got this, Mom.
And while you have it close, the little sayings are awesome. See how when you're holding it close, see the seams on the sides? See how thick the seams are? It's not going to rip open on the sides. That's one of the things that you'll see when you're looking at a milk storage bag. You'll see that if it doesn't have those thick seams, they can separate and your milk can leak. So this is really, these are really good seams here. Love these bags. And then the clip with it, this is just genius. Now this can be used with any bag. So these come and they're sold separately. And this actually can be screwed onto standard neck flanges. So you can use it with other pumps, because that is the question that people ask about this, and it's good.
Look at that.
I love this thing.
Get it done.
Love this thing.
What else? Are bags one-time use only?
Yes, they are. So you use them once, and then you toss them. Once you open it, you store in it, and then you defrost your milk. Then you're going to be throwing out the bag. Yeah.
Let me see a couple. Where can you get the bags? Stores?
The bags are sold Walmart.
Yeah.
They're online. They're Babies R Us, Buy My Baby. Evenflo Feeding's on the chat right now.
Yeah.
I think they can give you all the different.
We have Evenflo paying attention.
They're like on every. I mean, the bags are sold pretty much. I think Target online and Amazon. They're everywhere. You can get the bags anywhere. Just look up Evenflo Feeding. Let me have the package here.
Oh yeah.
That's what the package looks like. And then, like Jamie was saying, like each of them have these cute little sayings on them, and the material's just really great. And they're easy for pouring too, because they open and then they create a spout. So like, and it has this really great like Ziploc too here. So this is really strong, so your milk's not going to leak. They just thought of a lot of things, even like small things like when you actually close this and then you lay it down. The writing's in this direction so that your hand's not on the milk. Like, it's just very thought out. The people at Evenflo Feeding, they're all breastfeeding moms. And so when you look at the pump, and I mean, it's a company of breastfeeding passionate moms. And that's really different than most of the breastfeeding pumping companies out there. You're not seeing women actually running the company. The president's a woman. Director of marketing, Lisa, everybody there, and me, and Lauren, and Sarah, and everybody else who's at the company. Amazing people who just dedicate their lives to creating awesome products. That's why I love working with them.
Somebody said, let's talk about milk storage then, really quick. Somebody had a question about once breast milk is warmed up, how long is it okay before you have to dump it out?
Warmed up like from the refrigerator or the freezer?
Let's do both.
Okay, so once milk is defrosted, you have to use it within the first 20. We have to use it within 24 hours. Like the milk can't sit out forever. Once the milk is warmed up, I would say that if it's been refrigerated, or say it's just been in the refrigerator, you don't really want to warm it too much. You're like maybe taking the chill out of it a little. I hate dumping breast milk, so my answer would be if the baby doesn't finish the bottle, take it and put it back into the refrigerator and then use it for the next feeding. That's my answer. It's very hard to make breast milk go bad. It's got antibodies in it. It's not like formula where you have to be very careful with formula handling. You err on the side that it is probably bad. If the baby drinks half the bottle, you toss it. With breast milk, I always tell people, call me before you toss your milk. Like, it's very hard to make breast milk go bad. So you could use it for the next feeding. That would be my answer.
We've had quite a few people asking about getting milk supply up if you are pumping. We even just had Maria, beg please, with a lot of E's. If you are pumping,
how do you
get your milk supply up, I will just say you need to make sure you have the proper flange fit, and you need to really know how to use your pump and make sure your pump has speed and suction controls that are independent. So
I think you're absolutely right. Like, part of the issue why you'll see breast milk decline when people start pumping is because the pump typically it's harder to get the milk out than the baby can. Like the pump it's just not as efficient as the baby. So because of supply and demand, if you're taking out less, you're going to start making less. Now, if you don't have the correct, like Jamie was absolutely right. If the flange is the wrong size for you, it's gonna hurt, and if it doesn't hurt, it's just not gonna get your milk out. But what do moms do? What do women do in general when it's not working? They blame themselves. So instead of thinking, well, it must be the flange, they go, it must be me, I don't make enough milk, when actually it's probably the flange needs to be changed. So you make sure that your flange is fitting properly. And
you may have to change them throughout.
Exactly. It may change over time. You may need one size on one side and another size on the other side. I have a really good video on it's in my Facebook.
It's in your Facebook.
It's in my Facebook. Did you put a link to my Facebook on the post?
If you just go follow Shari, look in her videos. She has a video that discusses flange size, and because it's not just about like measuring. And
you can't measure. You really can't measure. Yeah, you really can't measure. So, and it actually shows like what the right fit looks like, and I talk about it a lot more. But that's one thing. And then what Jamie was saying about the speed and suction controls. A lot of the pumps have like two-phase expression. Okay, and I'm going to just straight out talk about two-phase expression, because pumping and breastfeeding and expression of milk is not two-phase, it's multi-phase, okay? We do this in multiple phases. If you think about how a baby eats, there's the initial letdown. This is where we talk about our letdowns.
I have letdowns all the time, and it's called OkCupid and dating. It's try to explain what I do for a living. You go on a date.
It's kind of bizarre, right? Yeah.
I give up.
So yeah, I mean, but then when the milk actually does let down the first time, that's not the end of it. At that point, you're expressing milk. But then the milk starts to slow, and people think, oh, well, that's all I'm making, okay? And I make 1 ounce, and I can't get any more out. If you continue to do that over and over again, you're going to decrease your supply. But the point is that there are ways to get multiple letdowns during a pumping session, and you need independent speed and suction control, not a dial that does it for you, not something that when you turn up your suction, your speed goes down. You need to be able to control it yourself, so that when you see your milk slowing down as you're pumping, you leave your suction levels where they are and just keep increasing your speed until you see that letdown happening again. And when the letdown happens again, you decrease your speed. And so you're working with your pump to stimulate more of what your baby's doing when your baby's breastfeeding. That's going to, really help with a lot of the supply issues that people create because of not pumping enough with their pump. If their pump's not fitting, if their pump doesn't have good suction, and a lot of the pumps out there just don't have good suction levels. And what's happening is they don't work well when they're using them in double mode. A double pump should be able to work in double mode. Otherwise, what good is it?
Yep. There we go. Oh my God, we have like 12 more minutes. We have time. It's so nice to not be crammed into an hour now.
It really is.
Facebook, you're so good to us. We try to be good to you back. Let's see here. I do have
freezer stash. Somebody's asking.
Yeah,
freezer stash.
go for it.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a minute.
And then we've had I'm taking notes. It's just hard. Freezer stash. I'll make a note in here. SNS, Supplemental Nursing System.
What's
there's
it
no
for?
Yeah, there's no real question. It's just SNS, Supplemental Nursing System. So we'll talk about an SNS, what they're used for, what they're not used for, etc.
What is a supplemental nursing system? So a supplemental nursing system is it's a way to supplement your baby with either breast milk or formula while feeding at the breast. So if you really do identify that you're having an issue with milk supply, there is a way to use a device like that that has sort of a container that holds the milk. There's different kinds of supplemental nurses. So it's some kind of a container that holds either the breast milk or the formula in it. And then there's a tube that runs to the nipple that gets taped to the nipple so that when the baby nurses at the breast, they're getting supplemented with the extra breast milk or formula while at the same time breastfeeding. And that's going to do two things. One is it's a great way to keep the baby from starting to reject the breast as you're increasing your supply or needing to supplement if you do have a low milk supply. That way your baby will continue to breastfeed versus bottles. And the other thing is, even if your supply is low, this will help to increase supply because the more sucking the baby does at the breast, it does help increasing the milk supply. It's draining every last bit out at each feeding, and it's ultimately increasing your supply. It's not the kind of thing you just do on your own. Okay, if you're at a point where you are really worried about your milk supply, if your baby is not gaining weight, if you're having issues where you're at a point where you're like, what's a supplemental nursing system? You need to be going to see a board certified lactation consultant. And I'm talking about an IBCLC, somebody who's very trained at dealing with low milk supply issues. You do this with counseling. You don't do this on your own because it's just too important, and you really need the help. And it could be that everything's fine, and you don't need it. That it could be a perceived issue, or if it really is an issue.
I mean, it's
a great tool.
kind of like,
it's a great tool.
It's just like, I would say it's just like, More Milk Plus or any of the teas like Earth Mama makes or whatever. It's like, it is a tool. And if you start using these milk boosting things, and they're all great things to have if you need them. But if you're doing it,
there's a reason you're doing it.
You're not aware, like, is there a tongue or lip tie issue? Is there a latch issue? Is your pump not working?
Exactly.
You need to work to understand what's going on before you start taking nursing supplements. And even though I talk about them on Facebook and whatever, I always say, work with an IBCLC to determine what the issue is. If you have a supply issue, they're a great tool because oversupply is also a huge problem.
Yes. Definitely. And that leads right into freezer stash.
Freezer stash.
So oversupply and freezer stash. For all you guys who have bought extra freezers to store your 10,000 extra ounces of breast milk, it's unnecessary. When you hear other people talking about, I have like thousands and thousands of ounces in my freezer, that's good for donation, okay? And if you are somebody who wants to pump that much and you're able to, and you can donate that milk is really needed.
Yeah, and if you're able to do it without causing issues to yourself.
So if you're...
I'm going to hold my boob here.
We don't want you to get mastitis.
No, you don't want the boob flu.
So if you are having mastocytosis, if you're having breast infections, if you're struggling, and then you're oversupplied, and you continue to pump out all that milk, you're going to continue the same issue. Now, if you don't have that issue and you're able to pump extra, it's great to donate your milk.
I'm just brainstorming in my head. I need to make a note. Continue.
Okay. But freezing milk, how much, I think the question really what they're asking is, how much do I need to keep in the freezer? And typically I recommend somewhere around 10 to 12 feedings, and that's an ideal amount. Like, you know, having around 10 extra feedings in the freezer for emergency use. That's for moms who are exclusively breastfeeding. Even if you're working, you know, when you're working every day, you're going to be pumping, and then you're going to bring home your fresh milk, and then the next day you're going to leave that milk that you pumped for your baby. What's in the freezer is that emergency supply. So like, say for whatever reason you spilled the milk, or you weren't able to pump a lot one day, or whatever it is, you have somewhere to pull from. But you don't need thousands of ounces. And if you don't have thousands of ounces, you don't have to feel like you're inadequate. Because that's what winds up happening. Like, people, they have, like, you know, they love to talk about how much milk they've frozen, and that's great, especially if they're donating it.
Donating is great.
Donate it. If you have that much, donate it. Because your baby, unless you're, you know, this idea, like, I'll pump a lot for the first 6 months, and then I'll feed frozen milk for the second 6 months. Not like the most ideal situation. It can typically cause oversupply. Breast milk changes over time. Frozen milk is not the best thing. It's better than, you know, it's better than not giving breast milk, but fresh milk or refrigerated milk is better than frozen. It's an emergency. That's how I look at it. Look, like, you need to not you're hospitalized, or whatever the problem is, or you're away from your baby and you need that extra supply, you have it. But it's not a normal situation.
I think we could actually, one note I made in my phone was like, I think it'd be interesting to do a whole thing about, or a good chunk about, like, actually donating milk and what the different routes there are to that. Like, I've toured Mother's Milk Bank in Austin, and it's fascinating when you go through there. And I would actually love, now that we can Facebook Live, to go through and be like, you know, when I toured that place, it was like, they get all this milk in, they analyze the caloric content, the nutrient value, and all of it, and they mix everything based on what preemies need, because that milk goes to high-need babies. It's not like, oh, I need to go in there and get milk. It goes to babies who are in the NICU, who are preemies, who have serious issues going on, and it's fascinating.
That can die without that milk. Can die without that milk.
Amazing that we have the technology to make breast milk cocktails, basically, to be like, this is what this baby needs. It's incredible.
Human milk. Human milk for human babies. It's a great thing to be able to donate. Is there anybody out there that's donating milk right now?
We have 3 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think it could be interesting to do that.
I would love to do that. Let's do it.
Let's go to Austin.
I'm going to be in Austin. We should go.
Are
we coming back?
We're going to come back. We're definitely going to come back. We're going to take a little pee break because, you know, we've been here for an hour and a half, and quite frankly, she's had the water, I've had the wine.
We need it.
So we will come back, and we will just do an open forum Q&A and chat with everybody. Anything you want.
First of all, let's just thank Evenflo Feeding.
Evenflo, thank you.
And somebody's going to win a pump.
Yeah, somebody's going to win this pump. Not this pump, but a new one.
You'll get a new one, I promise.
So, I mean, this is... I love doing this, as you all know. We love doing this together.
We love it.
It's
our favorite.
We have this platform, so why not?
It's so great.
You know, I talk about random shit all the time, so it's like to be able to, like, come back to edutainment, if you will.
It is edutainment.
Love this. Love that y'all. We love that you spend your time with us.
We do. We love you guys too, and thank you for being here with us, so that we get the opportunity to teach.
Yeah. So we will.
We'll see you soon.
We're going to shut this down. We're going to take 5-10 minutes, regroup, refresh, and come back for all kinds of things. Thank y'all for hanging out. Bye.